Sonic Team and the writers behind The Simpsons have both gotten tired of the complaints. Sonic the Hedgehog and/or The Simpsons haven't been good since the 90s, they all say. Well, they'll show them. They got a new device called the Dimensional Transmogrifier Whatever 9000, and they decided to bring both Sonic and Bart into reality. After all, who would know their series better than Sonic himself and The Simpsons' top character from the 90s? Then they sent them back to the year 1999, right after Sonic Adventure's release, and before Zombie Simpsons, as well as Sega going third party. They're given the task of working with their respective teams to bring their series back into new heights. Or to at least save their reputations. Then they'll look at if that timeline turned out better. Yes, Sonic is going to help make new Sonic games, and Bart is going to help make new Simpsons episodes. Who will succeed in their goals?
Alright, let's be frank here. Sonic has had a pretty rough time as of late. His fanbase is stagnated in a war between classic and modern games. His new movie was on the verge of being a train wreck, though luckily that's been majorly fixed at the unfortunate expense of working animators down to the bone, and his games have been consistently mediocre. Though if there's one thing I'll give Sonic and Sega, is that they know how to poke fun at themselves and are incredibly self-aware of their fan wars and polarizing games. Sonic Boom, the cartoon, not the game, is full of many jabs to the blue blur, like his change in arm color, the decline in review scores post 3D era, even the shipping scene.
No, I was just searching for more of that fan fiction of yours. Ooh, Son Amy, spicy.
There's also the official Sonic Twitter, arguably the most popular, or at least well-renowned, brand Twitter of them all, next to Arby's. But instead of having the meats and cardboard cutouts, the Sonic Twitter tweets like a meme-spewing zoomer and appeals to a lot of people, especially when it pokes fun of its own series. It's pretty ballsy for a brand to make fun of itself, but that lies the key. Sonic as a character is more than aware of the stigma around him in the modern age. The Twitter itself is supposed to be ran by Sonic, of course, given the AMAs they host, as well as some posts from Mr. Needlemouse himself. You need to first recognize the problem your brand has, so you can address it and fix it, and Sonic both has the knowledge and resources to solve all of this. For example, one of the few universally acclaimed Sonic games in recent memory. With Christian Whitehead at the forefront, the team at Sega has someone who grew up and loves Sonic, and can help infuse the series with what the fans love, both the games and the cartoons. We don't even have to just stick to 2D Sonic games, as I feel many of the main problems people have with 3D Sonic games are with the cookie-cutter boost formula and the glitchy controls. The former can simply be avoided, and the latter just means Sonic has to ensure each game gets more development time, and they cut the gimmicks disliked by fans. This means no Werehog, no Night Sonic, no Arabian Sonic, but that's probably for the best. Hell, he can even take some pages out of Mario's book before he even does them thanks to the time travel gimmick in his fight. Imagine if Sonic had Galaxy-style gameplay before Super Mario Galaxy even came out. Mario would be the new Sonic, and Sega would really be the ones doing what Nintendo don't, like they say in the slogans. There are also ways the Archie series can be improved, namely by avoiding the Ken Penders echidna fetish art. Google it if you don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, the plotlines got really confusing for the entire Archie series, and the story became so incoherent that non-Sega characters like the Street Fighter gang and Mega Man had to come in and retcon the entire thing. Then lies the issue of characters. As much as I love most of the modern Sonic cast, most of them feel like filler, created for the sake of Sonic to have friends. Silver, for example, has a really inconsistent personality, Blaze has had two backstories that completely contradict each other, and characters like Cream the Rabbit and Big the Cat are as interesting and complex as a ketchup packet. Either flesh them out or axe them. Improvements can also be made to the characters people genuinely like too. Flesh out Shadow more, make Tails more than just the sidekick, and Eggman, keep him the way he is, he's perfect. Also keep the music. Crush 40 and all of them make really good stuff. Ultimately, Sonic and the team at Sega just needs to stop settling for mediocrity, but seeing the state he's in right now, I bet he'll do anything to escape his modern persona of the self-deprecative Twitter poster. Hell, Sonic has stopped Doom Futures before like in 06 and Forces, so what's stopping him this time? Well, Bart is I guess, but even still, so long as Sonic makes sure Sega goes the extra mile to pump out quality content and steers clear of certain phases of his lifetime, he should be able to restore his brand. It says a lot when Sonic's floating in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, the same year Rise of Lyric is being released. At worst, Sonic is still a beloved character, and at his best, Sonic could potentially be the most iconic character of his era, for video games at least. All Bart is renowned for is getting t-shirts banned at school, and getting bought out by the people the Simpsons make fun of. Okay, I'm kidding, but Bart definitely isn't as self-aware as Sonic, nor is the rest of the Simpsons cast. You can catch them on Disney Plus singing about Baby Shark or playing Pokemon Go. Though, funnily enough, Sonic is in a game with Baby Shark, Super Monster League, or some generic gacha game title. Plus, I feel like if Bart was in charge, he'd make most of the show focus around him abusing Homer anyway. They're the real Zoomers, and that's comparing them to someone who zooms around at the speed of sound. Hey, at least they're not Modern Family Guy. This whole concept is really meta. But that's it for my part. Let's troll, meme, gif, and pwn Bart Simpson. Okay, not actually. Call it a hunch, but I don't think Ducko likes memes.
I will speak in this part for Bart. Both of these people are kind of immature wisecrackers, but I will say for good old Bart that he at least lives in a regular society, in a house, as a student, who goes to school, watches TV, plays video games, reads comics, watches movies, all that stuff. Whereas Sonic may know of some things, like copyright laws and chili dogs, he spends most of his time rolling around at the speed of sound, and not too much settling down and living somewhere. In fact, I think Sonic might be homeless. Certainly he's not someone who has experience in developing video games, whereas Bart Simpson had success with making the Angry Dad comic about Homer, meaning he at least has some experience writing comedy involving his family, as well as helping write a successful episode of a long-running animated series, since he and Lisa wrote an episode of Itchy and Scratchy, and submitted it into a contest under Grandpa's name, and won! No doubt many others may have entered, most of them being adults, which they had to be since they had to submit it as Abraham Simpson instead of just Bart and Lisa. And they made a decent profit out of it. There are also numerous times where Bart has directly helped out noted children's entertainer and basically the host of the Itchy and Scratchy show, Krusty the Clown, through numerous personal troubles. And again, the creators of Itchy and Scratchy directly in a legal battle. Really, this experience tells me that he knows how to observe his family and mine it for comedic potential, picks good collaborators, and has practical experience in both the business and creative sides of the animation and television industries. I'll also say that Bart Simpson has mostly just always been Bart Simpson, whereas recent Sonic games have confirmed that modern Sonic and classic Sonic are two separate entities, or characters, or something, I don't know.
You're that Sonic from another dimension, aren't you?
This means modern Sonic has mostly known the mixed to bad times, rather than most of Sonic's heyday. Bart may also be reinvigorated by going back to when the Simpsons were still relatively in their prime, either to put new life and creativity into the series, or end it earlier on a high note. King of the Hill has recently debuted, and Futurama and Family Guy were debuting that year as well, and this was way before Family Guy had become the ironic meme material that we know it as today. So it's not like Fox was lacking for other high-quality adult animated programs. Ones that The Simpsons helped pave the way for, by the way. Regardless of which route Bart takes, in this contest of fixing a series, either it's someone who, even as a youngster, has experience in the field and in writing new, entertaining stories in a long-running animated series, or someone who has no experience whatsoever in game development. Sure, he may be self-aware, but even with self-aware Sonic, we still got the rise of Lyric and Sonic Forces. And I'd say Team were the ones who made Sonic Mania, mind you. The only way I can see Sonic getting anything good out of this is if he just hires someone more competent and just gets out of the way. But again, while he can go, haha, Sonic, XD, funny, I doubt his business savvy. Especially since the only businessman he knows is a straight-up supervillain that he fights all the time. As for stopping games from being rushed, this is Sonic. He's famous for his speed, but that overemphasis may have detrimental effects in certain areas. That impatient, impetuous Hedgehog will constantly be like, "Come on, why isn't it done yet? I'm waiting." If anyone would be more suited to saving Sega here, it's Segata Sanshiro, who held the Saturn against the dual onslaught of PlayStation and Nintendo 64, but sadly, he may have sacrificed himself before the Dreamcast's launch. And really, that's another thing that helps Bart and hinders Sonic. Most of the competitors to The Simpsons either came and went, are on cable channels like Comedy Central or Cartoon Network, or are right on Fox, and could just be set up as either successors or complements to the series, as previously mentioned. Meanwhile, Sega's been taking potshots at Nintendo since the Genesis era, but they generally abandon any series that isn't Sonic after a console generation or so. And all the major third parties mostly originated their game titles/series on Nintendo consoles, then moved to Sony's PlayStation. Capcom's best arcade ports were on Saturn and Dreamcast, but still, not enough. Unless Sonic can also figure out how to deal with the dual cultural juggernauts of Nintendo and Sony, in addition to rebuilding after the 32X, Sega CD, and a Saturn launch where the only new Sonic game was a glitchy foot racing game, Sega's demise may already be inevitable. I'll also say that this time travel thing may also help explain why the Simpsons keep predicting things. Clearly.
I agree with some of your points. Namely that Bart has experience creating cartoons, whereas Sonic has never made a game himself before. But you have to remember the actual quality of the Angry Dad and Itchy and Scratchy cartoons.
Whoa, that's funny!
In-universe, everyone loves them, but if The Simpsons devolved to just become a parody of itself like in these two shows, it would flop. Objectively speaking, The Angry Dad or an episode of Itchy and Scratchy standalone would not be critically acclaimed. Going from heartwarming episodes like And Maggie Makes 3 to the entire show being potshots at Homer and husk of its former self would be just as bad, if not worse than the eventual Fortnite dances The Simpsons will do as a couch gag. Compare this to Sonic, who is self-aware about what makes his games bad in the modern time, despite not ever making a game himself. Your argument is the epitome of, well, if you don't like it, let's see you try to make something better. You don't need to be a professional race car driver to notice one crash on the side of the highway. Sonic can basically go up to the Sega devs and be like, hey, don't do that. Also, classic Sonic is not a different entity from modern Sonic. At the end of Generations, Sonic tells him about the great future he has in store, which is ironic, basically implying that classic Sonic is merely Sonic from the past. A MacGuffin for there to be a reason to have classic Sonic and modern Sonic gameplay in the same game. Even if they were separate entities, Sonic knows how well Mania did in comparison to the game's post-06, so he'll still be aware the classic Sonic formula is what brings in the customers. There's also the fact that, while yes, many of the Simpsons competitors have yet to make a splash, Sonic still has the advantage of being a self-aware brand icon, looking beyond his own series. What's stopping him from stealing modern-day concepts from Mario or Crash, and doing them before they can? The scenario you specifically created entails that Sonic is going multi-platform anyway, so the failure of the Saturn and competing with Mario doesn't really matter anymore. Sonic isn't a beloved brand because it was on the Genesis. The Genesis was beloved due to having games like Sonic the Hedgehog. Out of the two, I believe Sonic is much more meta, whereas Bart's competence and ability to create cartoons and such only really works in-universe. And out of the two, Bart is the more controversial character, getting shirts and Simpsons-related merch banned from schools. Sonic promotes that cool guy attitude, but to my knowledge hasn't done anything bad. Except maybe the time Christian Chandler pepper sprayed a GameStop employee, or the time that same game bricked a bunch of Wii U's, or maybe most of the Sonic fanbase. Okay, never mind, but this is all long term, and we're talking about an era before Cold Steel and Sonic were birthed. Like I said before, on his worst days, Sonic is still a beloved icon by thousands all around the world. The main issue with his brand is that he keeps trying to change, and thus creates multiple subgroups for his fans, from those who only like the classic games, to the modern stans, to those who only like the comics. But as long as Sonic can unify all these groups and stick to what people love about him, I mean he's got the Twitter to show that everyone basically loves him just being himself, then I believe he will be more well equipped than Bart at restoring his brand.
The thing with Bart's quality of writing and Sonic's collaborative potential is that, thankfully for the both of them, they're not the only ones who have to work on it. That said, I've said before that Bart knows how to pick collaborators well, even if just in his own world. Whereas I do not actually see any evidence still for Sonic's practical game design experience or heading a development team. Again, putting an outside celebrity ego butting into game development sounds like a familiar recipe for disaster around this time. As for the emotional core of The Simpsons, Bart has plenty of episodes that have shown off his caring and emotional side, ranging from Bart Gets an F, to Marge Be Not Proud, to Bart the Mother. And again, he's lived through these things, so his understanding of it directly would be helpful for them getting a grasp on stories from his point of view. As for the classic or modern hoopla, it's something Sega did themselves, with time travel muddling the clarity of things. This could prove that time travel and Sonic might not mix well, and even in a generally liked game like Sonic CD, they had bad futures as a mechanic, meaning it could be a 50-50 chance this ends badly. At least The Simpsons and time travel mixing led to the classic Treehouse of Horror with Homer and a toaster. Yes, that was Homer, but Bart had some funny lines at least. Bart being a controversial character is also something I see more as a plus rather than a minus. For you see, Bart is more of an actual character, and he and The Simpsons both helped push the envelope on what could be done with animation on TV and TV in general. Whereas Sonic is iconic, yes, but at this time is basically about as deep and three-dimensional as Cool Spot is for most people. Whether or not he gets developed more later on and gets storylines in other games and outside media, this general perception will still stick with certain people. Even if Sonic isn't known as cringe back then, and we don't really have cringe or ironic cringe back then anyways, not to be a boomer, but that kind of makes me want to stay there. He's mostly known as just the mascot back then to the majority of people. Whereas Bart is still part of an ongoing, highly acclaimed animated series that helped kickstart the animation renaissance of the 90s that people still like to praise and look back on fondly. I'll also again bring up the idea that potentially Bart could get the show to end early and leave it as a fondly remembered series rather than a shell of its former self, which would be an actual decent tactic here, and I can actually see it ending amicably. Syndication, merchandising, and occasional specials could still keep it alive in people's minds, whereas with Sonic, giving up and going out in a blaze of anger, impatience, and egos butting heads is a possibility, which would end things in an even more disastrous way than in real life. Having a bad time with Sonic himself may even make them want to just stop making Sonic games altogether. Overall, I'm thinking that Bart has the collaborative spirit, practical experience, goodwill, and emotional depth. Another thing I found out is that one time, he once even hacked the Fox satellite to run Fox Kids, and it went over well with his fellow kids. Strange, but it happened. Much like Hank Hill selling the Silver Surfer propane, whereas Sonic and Sega have already fallen prey to bad decisions, and has more of a possibility of making things worse with his inexperience, impatience, and his potential ego. Well, we hope you like this match of beloved spiky-haired cool dudes.
If someone touches you in a place or in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's no good.
That doesn't have anything to do with anything. Check out the Galaxy Video, Ko-fi, and Patreon pages in the description, as well as links to Brandon's Twitter and channel, among other ones.
Ducko, are you self-promoting? Oh wait, you promoted my stuff too, never mind. Don't forget to also leave something interesting, funny, creative, or cursed in the comments.
And please try to keep the suggestions to the forms listed in the description as well. Especially you, the guy who puts a novel's worth of suggestions in the comments. You know who you are.
Sonic like Buzz now, everyone tell your